Welcome, weary and horrified viewers. Children in cages. Ugh, it's truly dreadful, isn't it? Now, Australia's not in a position to criticise, I have to tell you. Starting with a Conservative government some years ago, we had a turn back the boats policy. Now, Australia is a giant island, you know, so desperate people were arriving in boats, leaky boats, a bit like you're seeing in the Mediterranean, with those terrible people smuggling guys using rusty boats and stuff. It was dreadful. Australia's response was to refuse anyone who landed in Australia to be processed in Australia. So we began offshore processing. So quick deals were made with other tiny countries to take people who had attempted to get to Australia by boat. And that meant sending them first to Nauru. How many viewers know anything about Nauru? Okay, it's a rock in the middle of the Pacific. It's actually a failed state. They used to make money in the 60s from guano, which is basically bird poo, because the world needed it for fertiliser and stuff. And since then, their economy has collapsed. So we, the Australian government, put these poor asylum seekers in compounds on Nauru, and more recently Papua New Guinea. And it's truly horrifying. So journalists aren't allowed in. Ministers, politicians aren't allowed to see what goes on, or they're heavily escorted. Doctors have to sign agreements not to speak about what they see. And to their credit, a lot of doctors have protested this. It contravenes human rights legislation. So Australia has been hideous with this issue of immigration. It's not illegal to be a refugee. It is not illegal to seek asylum. But the whole discourse becomes illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants. No. But it works, right? It works in terms of the unthinking general public. And the Labor government, the equivalent of the Democrats, has kept up with this policy. It's disgusting. And right-wing hardliners around the world go, look at Australia, they've got offshore processing, that's a good idea. So it's really a sinister development in the hardening of the hearts all over the world. Now, we all understand you can't just keep taking endless millions of people, but there are other more responsible and compassionate ways of dealing with it. And there's no reason to keep kids in detention. And so we did it. We didn't so much separate the parents, but we put the kids in detention with the parents. No, hideous. All right, so as you know, I'm not reading on the kids per se, but I just want to do a quick take before I get on to the Trump charities, which you'd have to put in inverted commas. Charity for the Trumps would be how you put it. But before we leave this issue, I want to know, where is Ivanka? She who supports women and children. She has not spoken on this issue. She strolled into Dad's office, as we all remember, after the chemical bombings, and he responded with huge firepower because she was so upset about the babies being injured. What about these kids being traumatised beyond belief? Where is Ivanka? And I'm using the toff deck because I think she deserves it. Just like L'Oreal. She deserves it. Okay, Ivanka, what's your story? Let's have a little look-see. Oh, Interesting. Okay, so her first card in this is the Lovers. So, in a general sense, a card about lovers. However, that's not actually relevant or speaking to this reading, so we have to look at the slightly less personal cards in regard to this. So, the Lovers being love in a more general sense. If you look closely at this card, it has images of figures who are both black and white and coming together. So the issue overriding Ivanka'S reading is a love for all humanity is the question. Now we get into her more specifically, and we have the Nine of Discs or the Nine of Pentacles. In the Thoth deck, it's about gain and greed. So in other words, her greed for power, her greed for money is more powerful than her compassion, right? Underneath the Lover's card and besides the greedy gain card, we have the Prince of Wands in top. And have a good look. It's very similar to the Chariot. It's this time being pulled by a bull, and it's an androgynous figure in there. So that says to me, Ivanka carrying on business as usual, charging forth indifference to what she squashes in the path of the Chariot. This is borne out further by her getting the Queen of Wands. At its most benign, and it is it's a woman who's very generous and cares about people, so you can see it's a twin of the Lovers. But when it's not so benign, when it's malignant, as this is because of the cards that surround it, it's cruelty and indifference. Her final outcome card in this mini reading, the Ten of Swords, ruin. So in other words, she's being judged very closely for this and not too harshly. It can't be harsh enough, to be honest. So the story there is, as a woman, as a mother, she has some compassion, but it's such a foreign state to her and it's secondary to her greed, it's even worse. So it's like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or God forbid the dreadful Kirsten Nielsen, or whatever her name is. She was a good pick for Trump. Heart of steel. Okay, so to me, they're always worse. The people who know better and who don't do something are worse than those who truly don't know. Ooh, yucky poo. So it will lead to her ruin in the sense of her reputation is now gone. I don't mean her commercial reputation. I'm sure there's enough middle-class Chinese now to buy her stupid products. But the line she was taking, I'm a senior advisor to the president. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just a private person, you know, just helping Dad make some decisions. All of that's gone. Gone. She will be judged for this, her silence on this. Complicit, I'm afraid. Silence makes you complicit. There you go, Ivanka. Now, a quick reading, motoring on to the Trump Charities. Now, they're not alone in this. Corey Lewandowski, that vile creature that they had on the campaign, he was sprung, but unfortunately not jailed. He too set up these charities and creamed off millions. And the stories on the Trump Charities have been circulating for years, and now, probably you viewers know better than I do, it's something to do with New York. I don't know if it's the state of New York or whatever is calling them out over the abuse of the charities that they used as their piggybacks. So let's see what's happening with the Trump charity scandal. Not even a scandal, so much is going on every few hours that it's not the scandal it should be, but nonetheless, it's going to be another court case going on. Once they're gone, once they're out of power, they're still going to be dealing with these court cases, and it's going to send them broke. Okay, the Trump charities. Yes. 7 of Wands. Prudence. They're not very good at the prudence. Princess of Swords. Funny how this comes out with them. Okay, so at the top, they have the 7 of Wands, not a bad card, called Valor in the top deck. You know, this would be setting up the charities. We're rich people who care about children and cancer, you know. We're going to do this thing because it's the noble thing to do. That's how they started. Then they got the 4 of Wands. When you think about this, it's called completion in the top deck, the 4 of Wands. Now, it was reversed. So in other words, sorry, you're looking at me instead of the cards. My fault. Sorry. So you're looking at a card of completion reverse, meaning it's got stopped. It hasn't been completed as going on to be their permanent piggyback. They've been stopped in their tracks. This card, which is the Eon, or like strength, it's a mixture of strength and judgment. So they're going to be strongly condemned for this. So even though it's seemingly buried in all the other madness and fury and filth, there is a certain condemnation that will come through. In other words, what I think will happen as a result of this inquiry, it's chipping away, particularly with women at the base. So they weren't comfortable with the sleazy old Roy Moores and those that were getting the red carpet treatment from Trump. It lost them a few Republican women. I think this, like the children in cages, is one of those. It's not going to convert the hardliners, but it's going to erode the base a bit because people understand that you shouldn't steal from charities. You've next got the 8 of Discs, or the 8 of Pentacles. Okay, so this is the card of prudence in the context. Funny, old-fashioned word, but it's a bit like the Temperance card. So it's about moderation. And what I'm seeing here, particularly with the next card, it's their lack of moderation. So the story that's emerging in relation to their charity work, couldn't be a sillier name, is if they hadn't been so greedy, if they'd been more moderate, if, God forbid, they'd put more money from the charity into the cause instead of their pockets, they would have done better. They could have milked a bit off the top and no one would have known or cared for another decade. But they were too greedy. Their outcome, Princess of Swords, interestingly enough, Ivanka again, even though the brothers were seemingly those who ran the charities, she was instrumental in this. And this is going to come back and bite her on the bum. So it's a Swords card. It's comparable in the Rider-Waite deck with the Page of Swords. Spies. they keep getting the Trump personal readings, keep turning up the spy card, spy in the camp. I'm wondering if Ivanka didn't give up her brothers, right, in order to get some sort of sweetheart deal somewhere along the line with one of her other million court cases. This is not a happy family, troops. This is not a happy family, nor is it a loyal family. And it's always prided itself on family loyalty. Well, those days are over. All right then, so that's the Trumps ripping off the charities. Not a surprise, there's no end to their villainous and greed, isn't it? Their villainous behaviour. Ghastly people, ghastly people. All right then, I'm going to do another reading as soon as I can. Bye for now.